Hello, class. Objective 3 is about simplifying algebraic expressions. So I have it broken up into 4 parts. Basically, we're going to go through the different scenarios that you would see inside of the algebraic expressions that you will be simplifying. So for part 1, we're going to go over adding and subtracting rational numbers. For part 2, we're doing multiplying and dividing rational numbers. For part 3, we are going to evaluate exponential expressions. For part 4, we are going to simplify numerical, radical, and algebraic expressions. And for part 5, we're going to jump into some order of operation problems. And inside of those order of operation problems, we will need to know how to do the different things that I am breaking down into the different parts. So as always, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Shoot me a text. And my contact information is in the syllabus. So let's get started, all right? So for part 1, we are adding and subtracting rational numbers, all right? And rational numbers, that's basically, fractions, decimals, things like that, okay? So let's look at the fractions first. So here is kind of like the basic rules for thumb when you are adding and subtracting fractions. Most important part, whether you are adding or subtracting, the denominator needs to be the same in order for you to add and subtract fractions. So you want to look at your denominators and you want to find the LCM, which that means the least common multiple, or you can call it the LCD, the least common denominator, whatever you want to call it, as long as you have that common denominator so that you can add or subtract your fractions. All right, so let's look at example 1. We want to add negative 5 over 6 plus 3 over 10. All right, so we want to look at the 6 and 10 and we want to think, what is the LCM of the denominator, or what is the least common denominator? All right, the LCM of the denominator is 30. All right, so 30 is going to be our new denominator. All right, so now we need to figure out what our new numerator is going to be. All right, and when we are changing our fractions, the value of the fraction has to stay the same. So whatever we multiply by the denominator, we have to multiply that same number by the numerator. All right, so if we need to go from 6 to 30, we can multiply by 5, right? But if we multiply the 6 by 5, we also have to multiply this negative 5 by 5 as well. So that will be 25. So our new fraction is negative 25 over 30. It has the same value of negative 5 over 6, but we changed it because we need that common denominator so that we can actually add these fractions together. So now we need to look at 10. To go from 10 to 30, we can multiply by 3. But we can't just multiply the bottom, we have to also multiply the top. So 3 times 3 will give us 9. All right, now we have negative 25 over 30 plus 9 over 30. Now we have that common denominator. We can add our fractions. All right, so here you can see that when we have that common denominator, we can just add the tops together, all right? So if this was A over C plus B over C, we would add it and get A plus B over C, all right? And the same with the subtraction. So here we have negative 25 over 30 plus 9 over 30. So our denominator will, of course, be 30. And then the top, we have negative 25 plus 9, okay? So go ahead and put that in your calculators, negative 25 plus 9. Hopefully everybody got negative 16. So it should be negative 16 over 30. All right. Now, can we simplify negative 16 over 30? Can we simplify that a little bit? So when we are working with fractions and decimals, some of the things that you will see with the fractions, we will have to reduce them, meaning get them into their lowest form as far as not having a common factor in the top and the bottom. With the decimals, you may be asked to round to a certain decimal place. So if those are things that you need refreshing on, once again, make a note of that. And those are some things that we can talk about. Negative 16 and 30 are both divisible by 2. So we can actually simplify this to be negative 8 over 15. All right. So negative 8 over 15 is the answer to example 1. As you can see, we have a negative number here, and it is plus a positive number. All right. But after we find our common denominator, we can better see what our, final answer is going to be. All right. So let's look at example number 2. All right. So here we have a negative number and we have minus a negative number. So that means that this is basically going to be plus 7 over 12, okay? So before we can actually add anything together, we need to look at the 9 and the 12, and we need to think about what is a common denominator that we can use to add these fractions. And we want the lowest one because we don't want to pick like a huge number, because we're going to have to do a lot of simplifying in the end. All right, so the LCM of 9 and 12 is 36. All right, so to go from 9 to 36, we have to multiply by 4. And we can't just multiply the bottom by 4. We have to multiply the top by 4 as well, which of course will be 16. All right. So we know that this subtraction of a negative is going to turn into a positive. So I already have that there. So now to go from 12 to 36, we have to multiply by 3. So we can't just multiply the bottom by 3 and just drop a 7 up there, because that will be absolutely incorrect. So we have to multiply the 7 times 3, and we get 21. So now let's take a look. We have the same denominator now, so we can just add what's on top. So we have negative 16 plus 21, and it's over 36. All right. Now you can put this whole thing in your calculator if you would like to. So let me show you guys what that will look like. If you have the feature that my calculator has, you can just type in negative 16 plus 21, hit the down button, and 36, and hit equals. And I have my calculator set to give me a fraction, and it gave me 5 over 36. Okay, so let's break it up. You might want to break it up. So we could do negative 16 plus 21, and we get 5. So we added straight across, and then we kept our same denominator. All right. So I want to make sure that you guys understand the steps. Okay. You can put it in your calculator through the steps, but I don't want you guys to jump from here to here. Okay. I want to see you know, changing the sign and showing that you're adding the numerator together with your common denominator. I want to see all of that. Okay. Even if, you know, yeah, you can put it in your calculator like that technically, but I want to see you guys work through the steps that I'm taking the time to teach to you guys, because I want to make sure that you fully understand how this is working. Because when we get to the order of operation problems, it's going to be multiple steps and multiple things that need to be done. So I want to make sure that everybody is actually understanding. I don't want your calculator to become a crutch. Okay. So now let's look at example 3. Okay. So once again, I said, you know, rational numbers are also decimals. So let's look at that on the calculator. To do a decimal, you should have the period here on the calculator. So I'm just going to type it in, negative 114.039. I'm going to hit my plus sign. And we got 84.76. Okay. I'm going to hit equals. So we got negative 29.279. All right. So let's look at number 4. We got 42.987, and we are subtracting now, so we need to hit our subtraction sign. 98.61. Always look back and check, make sure it's the same. Hit your equal sign, and we got negative 55.623. Okay. If you do not have a calculator and you want to add it, if you want to call it the old-fashioned way, all you have to do is line it up with the decimals. All right. But if you have a calculator, by all means, just go ahead and use the calculator. It's easier, and we can get, you know, more into all of the juicy things that we need to learn in this class. If you can just, you know, use the calculator, and we can keep on moving forward. Got negative 51.783. All right. Now let's look at example 6. So with example 6, we are back with the fractions, but we have 3 of them, okay? So we looked at it with 2 fractions. Now we're looking at 3. So in the same fashion, the same rules still apply. We cannot add them together, add or subtract, unless we have that common denominator. So the numbers that we need to look at, we need to look at the 4, the 6, and the 8, okay? So out of 4, 6, and 8, the LCM is, hopefully you got 24. So now we need to think about, okay, our new denominator is 24. So what do we need to multiply by 4 to get 24? All right. And that will be 6. So this fraction here, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 6. Okay. So that means if you write it out like this, it may help you see better and get like a clearer understanding. So we do -3 times 6, which is -18. And then 4 times 6, which is 24, which is what we wanted, okay? Now we need to look at 1 over 6. We want the new denominator to be 24, so we need to multiply 6 times 4. And of course, whatever we multiply the bottom by, we have to also multiply the top by. So 1 times 4 is 4. And 6 times 4 is 24. All right. Now let's look at the third one. We have 5 over 8 and we want something over 24. So 8 times 3 will give us 24. And of course, we have to do 3 times the top as well. So our new fraction becomes 15 over 24. Pay attention that the signs at this point have not changed, okay? We just changed our numerator and our denominator because we need that common denominator, all right? Now at this point, we know that our denominator is 24, so we can do -18 plus 4 minus 15. So go ahead and put that in your calculator. Should have gotten -29 over 24. All right. And you can rewrite it. You can put the negative outside of the fraction bar. And you can write your answer like this: -29 over 24. Okay, let's look at one more like this one. We have, for example, 7. We have -7 over 8. We have minus 5 over 6. And then we have plus 3 over 4. All right. So we're basically doing the same thing that we did before. I went ahead and, filled in some of the steps. So we need to figure these numbers out. What we need to multiply this fraction by, what we need to multiply this fraction by, and what we need to multiply this fraction by, so that we can have our new fractions, all with 24 being the denominator. Should be 3 4, and 6. So you should have 21, 20, and 18. Now I want you to put in your calculator -21 minus 20 plus 18. So you should have -23. All right, so the answer to example 7 is -23 over 24. We're going to move on to part 2. With part 2, we are multiplying and dividing rational numbers. All right. So we're going to start with how you would do that. So if we're talking about fractions, to multiply two fractions is super easy. You just multiply straight across, okay? So if we had A over B times C over D, we'll just multiply the numerators together, A times C to get AC, and B times D to get BD. All right? Pretty simple, okay? Now when it comes to division, it's a little tricky. So with division, let's say we're taking A over B and we're dividing it by C over D, okay? What we have to do, we have to take that first fraction, we leave the first fraction the same, and we have to change the second fraction by flipping it or finding the reciprocal, okay? So that means that the numerator will become the denominator and the denominator will become the numerator, all right? So when we divide fractions, we have to multiply by the reciprocal, okay? So we keep that first fraction the same, we flip the second one, make sure we put our multiplication symbol in there, and then we multiply straight across just as we did here. So let's look at those principles in action. So here, example 1, we're going to multiply 3 over 8 times 12 over 17, okay? So since we are multiplying, that means it's going to be quick and easy for us. We can just go straight across. So we can do 3 times 12 all over 8 times 17, all right? We can put this in our calculator or do it in our head, and we can get 3 times 12 equals 36, and 8 times 17 equals 136, all right? Now we have to look, because with our fractions, we don't have our final answer if it's not fully reduced. So now we need to look at this fraction and see what common multiples and even the greatest common multiple that we can take out of the top and the bottom. So if we divide the top and the bottom by 4, we can get 9 over 34, and this will be our final answer, fully simplified, okay? So now let's look at division. We have 3 over 10 divided by -18 over 25. So we can still do all of this with positive and negative numbers. So let's go back to the principle up here. We keep the first fraction the same, remember? We add our multiplication sign, whichever one you want to use. Then we need to get the reciprocal of our second fraction. So it's still going to be negative, but the reciprocal is 25 over 18. So now that we are ready for multiplication again, we can go straight across. So we'll have 3 times negative 25 over 10 times 18. All right. So 3 times negative 25. You can do it in your head or put it in your calculator and get negative 75. And 10 times 18, do it in your head. We got 180, okay? Now, that's obviously not fully reduced. I have my calculator set up to automatically simplify. So that's an option to look into for your calculator. But if not, all you have to do is divide the top and the bottom by the greatest common factor. So here I'm just going to show you. I put that fraction in and I hit equals, and it gave me negative 5 over 12. So our factor is 15. So if we divide negative 75 by 15, we'll get negative 5. And if we divide 180 by 15, we'll get 12. Okay? So now let's look at the decimals. So using the decimals, I would recommend to just put it in the calculator and get it over with. That will be the easiest way. Of course, you can do multiplication and long division with decimals. So I'm just going to quickly kind of go over that. But if you have a calculator, I would just put it in the calculator. So to put it in the calculator, you'll do negative, same way we put it in when we were adding and subtracting our decimals, 6.89, hit our multiplication symbol, 0.000, 35, look at it, make sure you got all the right amount of zeros and everything. Hit enter, and on my calculator, I have it set in scientific notation. So let me see if I can get it out of that. And is that it? Nope. Okay, there it is. So now it's out of scientific notation. Your calculators probably won't automatically be set to scientific notation, so you guys should be okay. If it is and you can't figure out how to change it, then shoot me a message and we can figure that out. It differs by the calculator. On mine, I had to hit shift and this button to move the decimal back that way. If I hit this button, it'll put it back into scientific notation. So if you wanted to do this the long way, all you have to do is just set it up how you would do regular multiplication. You know, take the 5 and multiply it by everything, then skip this to 3 and multiply it by everything, add it together. Same way we do regular multiplication, but with the decimals, your ending answer has to be the sum of the decimal places. So this first number has 2 decimal places. This one has 5 decimal places. So the ending answer has to be negative, because we have a negative being multiplied by a positive. So the ending answer is negative, and it should have 7 decimal places. All right. So with the division, once again, we can use our calculator. We can do 1.32, hit the division sign, 0.27, hit our equal sign, and because I have mine set to reduce the fractions this way, I got 44/9. But on my calculator, if I hit this button, it will undo that, and it will give me 4.88888888. Okay, so for a lot of the decimal problems, you will be asked to round to the nearest whatever. So for this one, I want you guys to round to the nearest 10th. So this first 8 here is the 10th place. So I will look to the second 8. And because that 8 is higher than 5, it's going to make that first 8 be a 9. Okay, so our answer will be approximately 4.9. Okay, that's using the calculator. All right, if you wanted to do it with long division, you will set it up the same way we set up regular long division problems. The only difference is the decimal. Okay, so when you're doing long division, you have to move the decimal 2 places. As you can see, here is 2 places and here is 2 places. So you move it 2 places because this number here in the front, you don't want it to be a decimal. So we want to make this to be a whole number. All right. So after you move the decimal 2 places, then you can continue with your regular long division. And because the new decimal is here, the decimal up here belongs in this spot. Okay. So if you keep doing this, I stopped here at 24 and we got 4.88. From here, I can see that this 8 is going to make this 8 round up and I'll get 4.9. Okay. So for the person who asked, what if you don't have a calculator? It's ways to do math without a calculator, of course. But they sell scientific calculators at the Dollar Tree. So if you don't want to take the time to do all of this, which with all of the objectives that we need to touch this semester, I would just get a calculator. Okay. So, and that will kind of, take some of the time off of your work. So this is part 2, multiplying and dividing rational numbers. So how to multiply and divide fractions and decimals, which fractions are basically decimals. All right. So part 3, we are evaluating exponential expressions. All right. So when you hear the word exponential, you should think about exponents. So let's do kind of like a brief recap of exponents. We know that exponents is kind of like a short way to signify multiplying something over and over again, basically. So instead of writing 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, I can just say, hey, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2's that I'm going to multiply together. I can just make 2 my base and use an exponent of 5 up there to signify that this is what we're doing, okay? Same thing can be done with variables, all right? So we have a times a times a times a is 4 of them, so we can do a to the 4th power, all right? So in this situation, a is the base and 4 is the exponent. So let's look at how this works mathematically in the problems. So for example 1, we have evaluate negative 2 to the 4th power, okay? For example 2, we have evaluate negative 2 to the 4th power, all right? It may sound the same, but it looks completely different, all right? So this is a scenario that I really want you guys to pay attention to moving forward. It's going to make a huge difference with getting the answer right or wrong. So with example 1, you see that the negative 2 is in parentheses. So when that negative 2 is in parentheses, that means that we are literally taking negative 2 and we're multiplying it 4 times, all right? So it's negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, all right? We have 4 negatives, and remember I told you guys yesterday that when we have an even number of negatives being multiplied, that our ending answer is going to be positive. So our final answer is 16, all right? So in this example, yeah, we see negative 2 to the 4th power, but the negative 2 is not in parentheses, all right? So what this is saying is we have a negative out here, and then we have a 2 to the 4th power. So what this is saying is that whatever 2 to the 4th power is, we have to multiply that by a negative. So I rewrote it like this. We have negative 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, okay? So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is positive 16, and then we have to multiply that by the negative out front. Therefore, we get negative 16, all right? So looking at example 1 and 2, I would hate for you to mistake one for the other and get the whole problem incorrect, okay? So definitely pay attention to that. So let's look at example 3. So we can use our calculator. So I'm going to open parentheses and put negative 6 in here because that's what it says on the board. And on my calculator, the button, I have this button to square something, and then I have this button to raise something to another number other than 2. So I'm going to hit this button to square it because it's negative 6 squared. And I get 36. All right. And now for example 4, I'm going to take these parentheses out. And I'm going to hit enter again, and I get negative 36. All right. So what if in your calculator you put this, but on the paper it looks like this? It'll be incorrect. So make sure that you understand what's going on. This 6 is being squared, not the negative 6. Over here, the negative 6 is being squared. That's why they put it in parentheses to show you that that whole group is being squared, okay? So that's something to definitely pay attention to and remember. Now, let's look at example 5. Here we have negative 3 squared times 5 squared. All right. So what is negative 3 squared? We have this negative sign here, so we're going to keep that negative. And then we have 3 squared, which is 9. We're going to bring our multiplication symbol down. Then we have 5 squared, which is 25. Okay? So, from you all, I don't want you to jump from here to the answer. I want to see this step as well so that I can understand that you all understand what's happening. All right? So, in the calculator, I'm going to put negative 9 times 25, and I get negative 225. All right. So that's how you find the answer when you have two exponential expressions being multiplied together. All right. So for number 6, and I'm just going to type it in the calculator. And because we have it cubed now, I can't use this button. I have to use this button, which has X to the blank, meaning that I can, fill it in with whatever. So when I hit that button, it gives me a little box, and I can put a 3 in there. Okay? So I hit my equal sign, and I got negative 5 cubed is negative 125. Okay? So for number 7, we got negative 6 cubed. All right? And you guys should have gotten negative 216. So let's look at number 8. We got negative 4 to the 4th. And we have it in parentheses. So I'm going to do the same thing on my calculator. I don't want anything to mess me up or confuse me. So I have my negative 4 inside of my parentheses, and I'm going to hit this same button here to give me that little box, and I'm going to put a 4 in there. So here I have my negative 4 in parentheses, and I have it raised to the 4th power. Right? I'm going to hit my equal sign, and I get 256. Okay, so for number 9, if we put that in the calculator, you guys should have negative 3 inside of parentheses to the power of 4, and you should have 81. For example, 9. Let's work through number 10 together to make sure we got it down, okay? So first we're going to look at the negative 3 squared, okay? So I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to use my parentheses. So that's 9, okay? And 2 cubed, you can put that in your calculator if you already know what it is. That's awesome. It's 8. So our answer will be, and one thing about calculators, it keeps your answer in there. So instead of taking this 8 out, I'm just going to hit times 9. And it's going to give me 72. You can exit out and do 9 times 8 and get 72. That's perfectly fine. But whatever answer the calculator puts out, if you hit the operation buttons, it'll have ANS, meaning whatever your answer is, and then it'll have the operation next So it kind of, you know, saves that answer in there for you that way. So for number 11, let's work through the steps. We should have 3 cubed is 27. And keep our multiplication sign. We should have -2 cubed, which means -2 times -2 times -2. That's 3 negatives being multiplied by each other. So our ending answer is going to be negative. So we have -8. Then when we do 27 times -8, we get -216. Okay? So these are the basics of the exponents. Next, I want to show you guys these same exponents, but with fractions. So let's look at that quickly. So let's look at, and this will be example 12. So let's look at -2/3 cubed. All right. So what this is saying is that we have -2 cubed times why am I saying cubed? -2/3 times -2/3 times -2/3. Okay, that is the same thing that this means. Okay, so we have a negative times a negative times a negative, which is 3, which is an odd number. So our ending answer is going to be negative. Because we are multiplying fractions, we can multiply straight across. So we have 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. We have 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. All right. So this is the correct answer. All right. But in the same fashion, we can also go from here to here. We can put our numerator and our denominator in parentheses and cube the top number and the bottom number. All right. So we know from a previous example that -2 cubed is the same thing as -2 times -2 times -2, which equals -8. And 3 cubed, we know that that is 27. Okay, so if you kind of forget how exponents work, an easy thing to do to remind yourself is to write it out like this, so you can fully see and understand exactly what the exponents mean. Especially when working with the fractions, it's important to see that this fraction is being multiplied 3 times. Okay, after you get that down, then you should understand that cubing this whole fraction means that you are cubing the numerator and cubing the denominator, and thinking about it that way could make it easier for you and faster while you are doing your calculations. All right, so with that being said, let's look at one more like that, and this is example 13. And it is -2/5 squared. Okay, so if we want to get this done quick and fast, I'm going to take that -2, square it, take that 5, square it. -2 times -2 is +4. 5 times 5 is 25. And boom, that's my answer for number 13. All right. So thinking about it this way may be easier. Of course, you can do all of the steps and write it out that way if that's absolutely what you need to do. And yeah, I hope you guys understand the exponents now if you did not.
All right, class. So the next part is part 4 and 5 of objective 3. And for objective 4, we are simplifying numerical, radical, and algebraic expressions. And for part 5, we're going into the order of operations. So part 4 is the last thing that we need to touch on. So the square root of 16 is 4 because 4 squared is 16, okay? So we just got done looking at exponential expressions. So now we are looking at the radicals. So this is a radical sign, okay? So let's look at some square roots of perfect squares. So you guys need to make it an effort to really try to remember these, as these will come in handy in the future. So the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 64 is 8. The square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 100 is 10. The square root of 121 is 11. And the square root of 144 is 12. So the same way we need to know what these square roots are, we also need to know what 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared. We need to know all of those as well. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100, 11 squared is 121, and 12 squared is 144. So please make it an effort to remember these, as these are some of the most common ones that you will see in this class and in the future. Now let's look at part 5. So in part 5, we have the order operation. So let's quickly go over what that is. So a lot of people like to remember PEMDAS, and what this basically is, we have P for parentheses, E for exponent, M and the D for multiplication and division from left to right. A and the S is for addition and subtraction from left to right. So this is very important with the multiplication, division, and the addition and the subtraction. If division comes before multiplication, you have to do the division first. If subtraction comes before addition, you have to do the subtraction first, okay? So those two you have to do from left to right. Now let's look at some examples of this in action. For example 1, we have to evaluate 4 plus 8 over 2 plus 1. minus 3 minus 1 plus 2, okay? So the first thing we can do is our parentheses, okay? So I want you guys to pay attention to this fraction here. We know that a fraction is basically division, right? But before we can do the division, we have to do the addition first, okay? So we're going to look at that as we continue along. So first, we need to look at this 3 minus 1. So for now, I'm just going to keep this the same. And we keep that negative sign, and we have 2 here. 3 minus 1 is 2. And then we keep that plus 2, okay? So now let's look here. 4 plus 8 is 12, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So I'm just writing everything else down. So now we have to do this division. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. And then we keep on writing everything else. So now we have 4 minus 2 plus 2. So 4 minus 2 is 2. And when we add 2 to 2, we get 4. Okay? Let's look at example 2. We have 6 divided by, then we have brackets, 4 minus, we have parentheses, 6 minus 8. Then out here we have plus 2 squared, okay? So let's follow our steps. So the P, we have the parentheses. So we just gonna rewrite everything. The parentheses, we got 6 minus 8. So that's negative 2. We're gonna keep brackets around that. And here we have an exponent that we need to do. So 2 squared is 4. All right. Now these brackets are acting as a group or parentheses, so we have to do this. So we have to do 4 minus negative 2, and we know when we have that subtraction of a negative, 6 divided by, it is the same 4 as plus 2, which is 6. Then we have plus 4, okay? So we have to do our division next. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Then we bring that plus 4 down, and then we have 1 plus 4 equals 5. All right, for example 3 and 4, let's take a look at those. For number 3, we have 4 minus 3 times 4 minus 2 times 6 minus 3. And it's divided by 2, okay? So we need to work from the inside out of these brackets. So for most of this, we're going to be rewriting the same stuff, okay? So make sure you don't skip any steps. Some people try to like work down and then bring stuff down, and it gets confusing. So in these parentheses, we have 6 minus 3, which is 3. We're going to keep that bracket and keep our divide 2. Now we need to look inside of our bracket. But first, inside of our brackets, we have -2 times 3. So before we can subtract, we have to multiply. So these principles still work even inside of brackets and inside of parentheses. We have to follow the order of operations at all times. So -2 times 3 is -6. So we got 4 minus 6. And 4 minus 6 is -2. Now we have to look here. -3 times -2, we got 4 plus 6. Negative times a negative, we get 6, okay? Then we still have that divided by 2. So we have addition and we have division. Division comes first. So we have 4 plus 3 because 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 4 plus 3 equals 7. All right. Example 4, we got 18 minus 5. Then in our brackets, we have 8 minus 2 times 2 minus 5. Then we have it's divided by 10, okay? So let's rewrite this because first we need to start with the parentheses. So 2 minus 5 is -3. We're going to close the bracket and keep our divide by 10. Now we need to look inside of our bracket. So we need to first look here, -2 times -3, or you're subtracting 2 times -3. Whatever way you look at it, that helps you get the correct answer. So that will be +6. I'm going to close that bracket. Oh, and that is supposed to be a 10. So now we need to look in these parentheses. We have 8 plus 6, which is 14. So we're just going to keep rewriting it. All right. Now we have subtraction, multiplication, and division. So we need to multiply first. So we got 18 minus 70 divided by 10, because -5 times 14 is -70. Now we have to do division because division comes before subtraction. So -70 divided by 10 is -7. And 18 minus 7 is 11. All right, so for example 5 and 6, we're going to quickly go over those. So the first thing with example 5, we notice we have parentheses. So we have to do the parentheses first. Then we do our exponent, okay? So we do the subtraction first inside of our parentheses, then we square it. After we have that squared, then we can do our division here to get 8.1. Then last, we have to do 8.1 plus 6.1 to get our final answer, which is 14.2. For example 6, this is a 6, by the way. The same thing, we have to do the subtraction inside of the parentheses first, Then we square it with our exponent. Then we have multiplication and division. So we multiply to get this number. Then we do division to get our final answer. Okay. So once again, using that calculator is going to come in handy, especially for problems like this. That wraps up Objective 3. You should be well prepared to tackle the Objective 3 homework. So as always, let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see y'all in the next class video.